Hello, and welcome back to In Service to Transformation with me, your host, Claire Darnell. This week, I have a very special guest. I have my sister, Katie Lovell. Katie is a woman of faith and a recovering addict, an incredible mother, and she's just so valuable to so many for so many different reasons. When I asked Katie how to introduce her, she said, right now, I couldn't tell you what I am. And that kind of sums her up. So, Katie, thank you. Thank you so much for coming. I'm so grateful to have you here.
Yeah, thank you. So it's an honor to be here, if not a
Mm,
little bit um frightening at the same time. But yeah, I'm looking forward to see what happens.
yeah, me too. Yeah. And like we have such a shorthand, I'm kind of interested to see how that's going to come through. We've got that sisterly thing going on, right? Where
Yeah.
we kind of get each other. So I'm going to try to be mindful that we don't take any shortcuts and just sit here for an hour and a half laughing at each other's really bad jokes.
Yeah,
Yeah, but I'm really keen to sort of speak about there's so many things that we've experienced, together, alone, so many parts of my journey that have been yours, so many parts of your journey that I've shared with you. And I just feel like what an opportunity it is to share some of that with the listeners.
absolutely.
And yeah, for you to speak about your journey of transformation and because it's a phenomenal journey, right?
Absolutely.
So yeah, I'm just hoping it will really inspire and yeah, show others that, recovery is possible, that life is possible, yeah, having options and choosing the way you want to live your life that's true to you is completely and utterly possible. So let's start at the beginning.
Mm. Yeah. We had
And
that long.
no, but we can start somewhere. So I
Mm.
always ask the question, the podcast called In Service to Transformation, and for that the transformation means different things to different people. Some people have an aha moment, some people have like a gradual come into awareness that things need to change. Is there a point in your life that you could pinpoint where you thought, I need to change things up here. This is not really working out for me.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, probably about a decade before I actually did though. Uh,
Mm,
Things were, well, let's in recovery the term unmanageable would be used.
mm,
But you know, my life was chaotic. Um,
mm,
oh yeah, my life was chaotic. It was horrific at stages. Um, there were many moments that I knew change needed to happen, but
mm,
had no clue of how to do that or what that looked like. So just didn't. So it was just easier to continue in the cycle where I knew no different from than to implement any form of change, which
mm.
was an overwhelming thought, let alone applying any action to it. So yeah, I
Yeah.
just stayed in that rut really. But yeah, there was many times I knew I needed to change, even from
Mm,
young, in my twenties, in my
yeah.
twenties. So yeah.
Yeah. Wow. That's a really interesting way of looking at it because I was smiling as you were saying that as well, because I identify, often that inane grin is recognition of like, yeah, like I feel you, like often the rock bottom or the awareness comes in so many years before, but
Mm,
it's actually easier to stay in that groove of destruction or like just unhappiness for much
mm.
longer than is good for us, but we don't know how to find a way out.
Absolutely.
So what was it that kind of, that 10 years later, that kind of, what was that turning point for you?
Oh my goodness. So I've got to be honest with you, the intervention of family members and um, professional services actually as a result of my drug addiction. I it was almost a real awakening of you are in trouble, and I knew I'd been in trouble. However, there was no longer the avoidant tactic playing out. It was like you can't hide this anymore. Like
Mm,
you've been seen, you've been exposed, um, and rightfully so. I did not
mm,
have that view at the time. I need to be honest about that. But
mm,
I, the wheels had fell off. I the denial in me was so strong. I was outraged that the audacity of these people, including family members, how dare they? And I can really laugh about it now, and I think, wow, the denial was strong, like really strong. And yeah, the intervention took place, and when my children were removed, it still hurts.
Mm,
Yeah, I can feel them feelings today still.
mm,
When my children were removed from my care to protect them and to safeguard them, and I couldn't stop using substances, I knew I had a problem. The denial was smashed quite quickly.
mm.
That didn't mean I stopped using,
Yeah,
by the way. It wasn't my experience instantly. Uh, but I knew that I had a problem bigger than me that was out of my control. Um, yeah, I knew I had a big issue to deal with.
mm,
And then the issues that come along with that issue. Um, I had a trail of destruction behind me that I needed to try and work through. Um,
mm,
yeah, it was very daunting, but also a sense of freedom come from that being
mm.
free, really freed from the chains of secrecy,
Yeah,
which I don't sit well in dishonesty, ironically.
mm, yeah,
Ironically, hindsight's a good thing. I'd been trained by dishonesty and secrecy and a whole trail of carnage that I'd created for myself in active addiction. And and you know, and the ripple of that affecting my children, my family, my friends, you know. So yeah, that's when I knew,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Wow, thank you for your honesty. It's always so disarming, and
Mm,
it would kind of, I guess, if it's going to be a bit different, like the format of this, because I'm heavily involved, right, in your story, and it's
absolutely.
like
Yeah.
it seems only appropriate that we should share our perspectives because,
Mm,
um, we were sisters, like we are sisters, like
yeah.
we used to use drugs together,
Yeah.
we used to socialize together, and like for a long time it was fun, right?
Yeah.
Even when you were in your 20s and what I would have been like probably in my 30s, like yeah, we could coexist in that space
Mm.
together. You were always a little bit wild, right? Compared to me. Like there was always like, oh, she's worse than me. But
Yeah.
there was that definitely that sense of denial. And I
Yeah.
think it was very normal for us to just, exist in that the normality of using drugs and alcohol to change the way we felt was like we didn't even have that language and that vocabulary back then,
No,
right? We were just what you did. You had a laugh, you got off your
getting
head,
on it.
Yeah, you got on it, exactly. And then, that carnage you're talking about, it's just interesting because as you're sharing about that, it's like bearing witness to that because I'd come into recovery before you.
Yeah.
And at the point that I'd kind of got clean and started being in this journey of recovery, I think it was at that point our journeys really started to separate.
Mm.
And you were, having to hide from me more because
Mm.
the blinkers were off for me. And I was like,
Yeah.
this is not okay. Like
Yeah.
this is not normal. We're not supposed to do this. And I remember like walking a bit of a tightrope with you of wanting to maintain connection to try somehow to like bring you to
Yeah.
recovery, but at the same time, just being like completely powerless to really guide you anywhere because you were just on this trajectory and that's the way you were going. And it was heartbreaking at times because
Mm.
my biggest fear was that you'd stop me seeing the kids.
Mm.
You would stop me seeing the kids, and then I wouldn't have any ability to like see what was happening. And my truth is, there were times when I felt like I should have intervened before
Mm.
and I didn't have it in me to hold as much as that. I was still in early recovery myself. I didn't want the responsibility of your children or like your recovery and, selfishly or not, or just like, yeah, like in a self-orientated way, I kind of was just like that, that's not my problem. Like
Yeah.
she's got to sort herself out. So it's really interesting to just reflect on that. But inevitably, yeah, it was kind of accidental, right? How it came to
Mm.
be because things had escalated for you and you had clearly entered into this phase of not being able to control how much you were using and for how long, and like you'd
Yeah.
left the kiddies, like, and it just so happened that via a mutual connection, you know, and our kids were hanging out for the weekend, and then I ended up being called to, at the time, your
Mm.
partner's, your house, and
Mm.
they needed some support with the kids, and I was like, I'll take them for the weekend. And
Yeah.
then that was like a life-changing moment. When I look back at it now, I
Mhm.
can see how divinely guided it was. I can see it as
Absolutely.
God's work, right? And
Timing.
the piece you spoke about, you know, your anger and your denial. And yeah, I remember praying. I remember coming home and literally praying and meditating on like, what the hell am I supposed to do here? Because every part of me didn't want to intervene,
Yeah.
but I was like, I just got to turn this over. You know, I've got to pray. I've got to ask, what is the right thing? What does God, what does spirit, what does the universe need me to do here? And it was just so clear. It was like, you need to keep these kids safe.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I just thought, fuck, nothing is ever going to be the same again.
Oh my
Never,
God.
ever, ever going to be the same again. And it really hasn't been, you know?
Mm.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
much of this journey. I'd love to unpack more of this with you if you're
Mm.
comfortable with that. Like
Yeah,
in
for
this
sure.
episode, I feel it's really
Mm.
beautiful. It's a really profound experience for our family, you know, to
Absolutely.
move through. And I wonder if it might be quite inspiring for others who have
Mm.
family members in addiction.
Yeah.
Um, because it's not uncommon, right? I've experienced now since we've shared our story and we've like gone through it. How often do we experience people say, "Oh my God, my sister's like out there,
Yeah.
or my brother's out there, and I don't know what to do." And
Mm.
I wouldn't
Yeah.
want to go back to that space at all.
Nor would
Yeah,
I. Nor
yeah.
would I.
Thank God.
Yeah, absolutely. I believe
Yeah.
the timing was perfect. Hindsight's a great thing. At the
Mm,
time, I was so frightened but angry. Didn't really, it was such a whirlwind of a time.
yeah.
Felt abandoned by my family, betrayed, you know, that street mentality, really. Like,
Mm,
how could you do that to me?
yeah.
Not one thought or consideration at the time for my children is the truth, because I was so entrenched in addiction that actually that's it. Now it's your fault that my children have been, you know what I mean? It was insane. When I
Mm,
look now, I think, oh, you self-righteous little prat. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, at the time it was real. It was real. And I think
mm,
ultimately what I can see now is just the fear of not
mm,
having my children back and maybe not being the same again and not being able to do what I want when I want, because that's ultimately what I wanted in addiction. That, you know,
mm,
I'd been taken hostage, if you like, by the disease of addiction, and I didn't get a choice. I thought I was all this free spirit of living how I wanted, and actually the reality was I'd lost the power of choice many, many years before, and so did my children in that. Do you know what I mean?
mm,
They didn't choose to have a mum in addiction. I believe parents are chosen for children.
mm.
That I
Agree.
I may have been chosen as their parent when I'm aligned with God's will, but as I was
Mm,
living my life, absolutely not. I couldn't keep them safe. Yeah, you've done
mm,
the right thing.
mm. No, thank you. Yeah, yeah, it's been one of the biggest gifts actually to be able to step into that role and support you in finding recovery in that way. But at the time, it was one of the most painful things I've ever
Mm,
experienced. Like seeing you smashing yourself apart in that way
yeah,
was hard. And it just was like, I think at the time when the kids were with me and then eventually were placed with me and with mum, um,
yeah,
there was a ray of hope that came in, just a chink of light that was potential that you might find a way out of your
yeah,
pathway of addiction and self-destruction. And yeah, it was like, it just, I just knew I had no choice but to
yeah.
do what was being asked of
Mm,
me. Um, yeah. But God, it was really hard. It was so hard. It was really hard. It was really hard at some points to keep loving you
yeah,
in
of
that
course.
space, you know, especially at the beginning, like when you spoke about even when the kids were first taken, that even that couldn't keep you clean
Mm,
because you were just like so in the madness, right?
yeah,
And just like desperately wanting you to get it and just having to let you run your course, you know, and like
Mm,
do what you needed to do to hit your rock bottom was,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
pain.
and actually having to hurt you, having to say you can't come here when you're like this, and
Yeah.
no, and like you have to turn up at the allocated time,
Mm,
and like having to deprioritize my baby sister, having
mm,
to deprioritize you for the kids, and
absolutely.
actually because I had to be seen as a safeguarding factor for the kids.
Yeah.
So like you can't I couldn't let my boundaries down because I was
Mm,
being watched like a hawk, you
yeah.
know, by social services. So it was like such a catch-22 and so heartbreaking to have to feel like I was hurting you. But I can see now, like you said, hindsight is amazing, right? And I can see
Absolutely.
now, like those boundaries were absolutely necessary in order
Mm,
to support you to find your way.
definitely.
Tough love, right?
Yeah, it was intense.
Really hard, yeah.
Yeah.
And then you came to a meeting, right? I remember that day when you were like, because I've been trying to plant the seed for ages, hadn't I?
Yeah, I
And
remember saying, I remember calling you. It was dark. I was sat in a squat actually at the time. I'd broken into a building to because I'd become homeless. I'd lost my property. I'd lost my children. It was when I say intense and probably the most God-given of rock bottoms, actually, because I am one of those people that need to feel consequences, unfortunately. Um, and I remember being in this squat on my own, and I'd gone to pick up drugs, and I didn't want to use it. And
mm,
I knew my kids are over there. My conscience was, and then there's, and I'm what we would know in recovery to be powerless over this. I don't want to use it, but I'm crying. I remember saying to you about, all right, do you want to take me to one of their meetings? Like, I'm doing you a favor. Sorry. And you saying, turn up here on that given day, Thursday, clean. I thought, what the hell? Do you know what I mean? How on it? But I did. I did. And I remember that whole day being like tick tock, tick tock, tick tock, tick tock, tick. Because I just wanted to go to this meeting, whatever this was. But I knew I'd seen change in you. Not that I liked that change in you at that time, right? Let's be
mm,
honest.
mm,
Um, but I knew that it had worked for you. But again, I was still in that phase of where I'm different to you. You don't understand. You've not been through what I've been through.
mm.
Really like victim mentality kind of poor me.
Yeah,
You've not, yeah, it was just, but I did, by the grace of God, get to your house clean that day. And we did get to a meeting. And
yeah.
I remember it like it was yesterday.
Mm,
There was the beginning of my change. Yeah,
mm,
yeah, yeah. Powerful actually. When I think about what I now know was a surrender in that room, uh, the 12-step fellowship. And God, I'm eternally grateful to you and the rooms because my life has changed. Thank God. Thank God. Yeah,
mm.
yeah, thank God. Yeah, who knew?
Who know? Well,
Um,
someone did. Yeah,
yeah,
like, yeah, yeah, someone knew and they were guiding us the whole time, right?
definitely.
Hmm. Yeah, 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 I remember that too. And I remember the relief and then so interesting as well because obviously when when the kids had come to me, I had used the rooms like the we call 12-step fellowship. When we go to meetings, you often hear the term the rooms for anyone who's listening and doesn't understand what that means, but we use the rooms of any sort of anonymous fellowship as a place to go and get support. And so when the kids had come to me, there would be times when I would have to get to a meeting to be supported with what was going on for you and the insanity and the social services being involved in my life, and
Mm.
having to stop working, and like my recovery, trying to hold on to my recovery in this big life-changing moment, this pivotal moment of transformation for each of us, right?
Yeah.
And I remember going with the baby and like
Oh,
and walking in and people being like, "Oh, you've had a baby." Like, didn't even look pregnant. And I was like, "No." And she was, what, 5 months or so, I
yeah.
think, when she first
I think
came. And
so.
she was such a little monster, like a little
Little
gorgeous little
fish.
monster. And yeah, she would just sort of sleep through the meeting, like in the carrier or whatever with me. And then I remember, like you coming in after and it being like, no, this is who the baby belongs to, and people were like, so like you came into the rooms and there was this story unfolding for other people. But
Yeah.
when you came in, you were just loved straight away. Like so many people just adored you and loved on
Mm.
you. And it was so beautiful to see you be so welcomed.
Yeah, absolutely.
And in typical Katie style, like you just dived in, right? Like you're
Mm.
such a good student. Right, that's the
Mm.
thing about you. Like when you commit to something, and I think this is maybe something that actually is quite true of our family and the women in our
Mm.
family. I really see that when we want something, we set our mind to it, we go for it. Yeah, like we're
Absolutely.
very driven. And you did. You came in and you really committed to it,
Yeah,
turning things around, to doing the right thing by your kids in spite of yourself, you know?
absolutely. And I had no clue what I was doing. I remember not having a clue what I was doing, thinking that I was almost getting swept along. This is how I know
Yeah.
it was in my story. So,
Mm,
in spite of self, that kind of thing, and just
mm,
being loved so much, just being carried through what,
yeah.
and still, I would describe as one of the most painful, intense chapters of my life,
Yeah.
being scrutinized for every move, my
Mm,
whole history being divulged in meetings in front of rooms full of people, including strangers,
mm,
schools, my family. See, sitting amongst the mess you've created, you having to leave work feeling guilt, shame, and actually feeling those feelings for the first time.
mm,
And in spite of that, getting to meetings, crying. I must have spent the first, I'm sure I was known as the crying girl by certain members of the fellowship, right? And that's okay.
mm.
But being carried through that, and my sponsor at the time just loving me, man, like that woman, I love her, like love her. Um, and just being allowed that space to cry and feel sorry for myself some days and be angry some days and just be me, actually. Uh, Very raw. I remember being very raw.
Yeah.
And just, yeah, just being supported, like literally carried through the process of the court hearings, the social service meetings, the rehabilitation programs that I was kind of instructed to take part in against my will. Do you know what I mean? So the willingness was clearly not of my own. Yeah, divine intervention, if you will. So yeah, what a journey. It
What a
feels
journey.
like, reflecting now, speaking
Yeah.
about someone else, that's
Yes.
the change that's happened. So it's like I can almost find compassion for her, which has taken some time for me,
Mm,
moving away from that shame, guilt, and kind of look what you did, shame
yeah.
to wow, look what you went through, and actually it's okay. Like reparenting myself, I guess, which has
Beautiful.
come with the help of fellowships, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so glad you have that compassion for yourself, because I do know there was a time when we would talk about it and it would just be really hard for us to
Mm,
relate and connect without that guilt and shame. And like, I think also with me, without resentment, and
yeah.
judgment and like
Mm,
anger at you,
mm.
yeah. I mean, interspersed with like the deep knowledge that it was deeply transformational for me too. Like you enabled me to put down my work addiction. You enabled me to see a whole different perspective of what value is, like love and service and prioritizing family and all these things that I hadn't really had an opportunity to do. Like you gave me
Mm,
the opportunity to look after two of your beautiful children, you know. and in so many ways, the utterly destructive thing that was taking part was so constructive. It
Yeah.
started to rebuild parts of our relationship, and
Yeah.
I'd always say this, the way in which when you started to get clean and you started to like come back to yourself, like to who
Mm.
your true essence of how incredible you are, as a human, as a creation of God, let's say, like your divine spirit, you you were never a bad mum, but you like really started to step more into like this is what I want to be, like
Mm.
this is who I
Mm.
am, this is who I'm going to be. And also you started to step back into that space of being an amazing sister. So
Yeah.
like there were some experiences we had, oh now I feel emotional, where the grace the grace with which you tran you enabled us to move through situations together. um because I was having a lot of big feelings too, yeah, like this, these children, they'd come into my safeguarding and I was like very attached to them and I'd
Mm.
invested, and my fear was it was going to be wasted effort, and I
Yeah.
wanted it to like make sure, I needed control, it was
Yeah.
like this needs to work, like this cannot
Yeah.
go wrong, I'm not doing this again, like the fear of it not working out, and also the attachment that I'd had to form
Mm.
to your children, in order to be able to go through the function of like, reparenting a baby. It was
Yeah.
like, oh, I hadn't really bargained for this. So I had to really just immerse myself in the task.
Mm.
And what a privilege, what an absolute privilege. But there was a real, yeah, there was like a real pain in having to unattach.
Yeah.
And I remember the grace with which you handled that for me was just like it blew my mind.
Mm.
I don't know if I could have done the same. Like there would be times when I would fantasize about running away with Chloe, you know?
You can take her now if you like.
You're all right, I'm over it now. But there would be times when I would think about that, and it's like the
Yeah.
idea of not having her was heartbreaking for me. It broke my heart.
Yeah.
And so actually you allowing us to move slowly with
Mm.
that, you know, yeah, like pulling apart was really
Yeah.
beautiful.
Mm.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you for that.
I don't
Yeah.
really think you owe me a thank you.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. Yeah. Because it could have been very different. Yeah. So you've come into recovery, right? And then you've kind of become this. It's not been an easy ride, right? You've had like some ups and downs, like relapse has been a part of your story.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, but what I've observed about you is with that relapse, it's also been a deepening of you coming into understanding of what's important to you, what your values are, and
Mm.
like coming into more clarity with the sense of direction that you want to take. Do
Absolutely.
you want to speak a little bit about some of that?
Yeah, but I think not to dwell on the actual
No.
relapse or the use of drugs itself, but the process on which I experienced was that lack of self-honesty again and the struggles I was experiencing parenting as a clean mum, right? Single
Yeah.
clean mum, and then questioning if I even wanted that. So what had happened is I'd come in, hit the ground running, I'm doing this, I'm doing, but not really knowing if I wanted to be clean. But there was no way I was not going to fight for my children. There was no way that I was not going to get them kids back. There was no way that I was going to do everything in my power to let them know that I loved them. But I didn't see that again at the time. And I remember just thinking, this is tough. But instead of saying to people, I'm finding this really tough. What I done was, no, you need the toxic positivity. You should be grateful, Katie. You can't
Mm.
share that you're finding this. Some days I don't want my kids here because I just need a bit of space. I'd had this year of a foundation of recovery, getting to meetings when I wanted, with doing coffee shops after, but and that was changed. And then Auntie Jeannie passed away, and I found it really difficult in the latter part of 2017, and then obviously my family were in grief, so my access to support also changed. But instead of saying, I still really need that support from you, and using vulnerability, which is definitely a superpower of mine, I
Mm,
didn't. I kind of shut down. I went into this kind of really unhealthy, toxic self sufficiency, which was not self sufficiency. It was almost like an FU attitude, right?
mm,
And it did not serve me well, right? And it resulted in a process of it took quite a few months to get there, but I picked up substances again. I went out, I
mm,
left, my friend was at my house. I left to go to a meeting, detoured to say hello to a friend to say how well I was doing, and literally arrived at the front door, and within 3 minutes I was using the substance again. Do you know what I mean?
mm,
And the voice that said to me, "Yeah, no, you'll be all right," completely forgetting what I suffer with really, and knowing that I don't get a choice once I start. The first one, I truly believe the first one does the damage. I'm a staunch
mm,
believer in that, and the same voice that told me it'd be okay this time, it'll be different, said, "What'd you do that for?" You know what I mean? The voice of addiction. And it was my voice. It was my voice. Like,
mm,
what have you done? Because I knew I'd messed up. I knew I'd messed up.
mm,
And it was too late. It was too late. And I was gone. I was in full flight from reality again, and just thought, this is it. But I tell you, the one thing that did happen in that, and I'm really grateful for, is that I then knew I did want to be clean. So when
yeah.
those unanswered, do I even really want this? Yeah, I want to be a mum, but I don't know if I really want to be clean. Yeah, I did. I experienced torment in that relapse that I've never experienced before. I went to places that I'd never been to before. There was violence that had never been before. There was
Mm,
psychosis like there'd never been before. It was just darkness. Um, but what I do know is that there was a divine intervention in that, where I truly believed that I was saved.
yeah.
um, there was like, I'm talking a supernatural Holy Spirit, because I'm a believer in Jesus Christ.
Mm,
um, I believe that was the encounter that happened there and then for me, where it was almost like, wow, where I couldn't even speak about it when I got out of the relapse for weeks after, thinking people are going to think you have gone absolutely insane.
mm-hmm.
You've lost your mind. And it took me, I had to test the water with some people and go, well, I think I've been saved. Even the language that was, it wasn't of me. And I just had this encounter that I needed to share. I needed to share. And what now is really my testimony, where I was pursued by my higher power, which is Jesus, and saved from that. That wasn't my purpose. That's not the plan and purpose for my life.
Mm,
There was a bigger call upon my life, and it wasn't to be in the trenches of addiction. It was to be here, recovering, being a mum, being a sister, being a daughter, being a friend, being a sponsor. And I now lead a recovery ministry
mm,
alongside with a dear friend of mine. Um, yeah, I'm a firm believer in my faith, and it's been massive for me, massive
mm.
for me. Shedding some belief systems that wasn't of mine, that I was brought up in, shedding
Yeah.
them, letting go of those, being
And what,
quite frightened to do that as
yeah.
well. Raw
Yeah, of
honesty.
course. Yeah. And what do
Um,
you mean by that? Like shedding belief systems? What is it? Because
you
we
know,
absorb things from all around us, like our education, our
absolutely.
home life, our
Mm.
friends.
So I was brought up by a completely non-believing mum. We were,
Mm.
we were.
Yeah, we were.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
If there was a God, this wouldn't happen. If there was a God, there'd be no wars. If there was a God, there'd be no famine. If there was a God, we wouldn't be experiencing this as a family. If there was a God, and so I had that. I inherited those belief systems.
Yeah.
Um, I inherited that, and then actually there was the fear for me as a daughter, is, am I going to be rejected because of these beliefs?
Mm.
But what happened in that was actually it was so strong for me, this pull to my faith, that actually that become more important than actually my mum's approval, which was
Mm.
massive for me. I'm a chronic
Huge.
codependent man, you know what I mean? And it was huge. So there's been so many significant changes within this for me,
Mm.
and having to say, I'm getting baptized and I'm attending church and this is my belief system, and
Mm.
just massive personal
Huge.
as well as
Mm.
spiritual growth. Growing up, letting go. Do you know what I mean? Call it cutting
Mm,
the apron strings, and which I didn't even know existed really.
mm.
Um, yeah, definitely massive transformative processes there. So yeah, it excites me. When
Wow.
I speak about it, I can
I
feel,
can feel your passion. Yeah.
yeah, I can feel because I just do not underestimate how much that has been fundamental for my change. So the
Mm,
12 steps 100% have changed my life, but the 12 steps with a relationship with Jesus for me has been absolutely mind blowing.
mm,
Mind blowing to the point where my human brain can't comprehend.
mm.
I guess how you believe about, your faith and your beliefs.
Yeah.
It's just wow.
Yeah, totally. There's so many parallels because as you were speaking, I was thinking, yeah, the 12 steps is amazing. And like for people who are listening who maybe aren't aware of what the 12 steps are, it is a wonderful program.
Mm,
But it is, as they say in the literature, it's a spiritual, not religious program. So
absolutely.
in order to be a member of a 12-step fellowship, you don't have to believe in a particular doctrine, and
That's right.
you don't have to be a Christian, you don't have to be a Buddhist,
Mm,
you don't, you literally get to
mm.
choose your own spiritual pathway, which is one of the beautiful, diverse elements that for me has kept
So
me there.
important. So important.
And we do get to spiritually explore. So in my time of recovery, I've, been a practicing Buddhist. You even came to some Buddhist
Yeah.
meetings at the
Yeah.
beginning in your exploration, right? I've like, I've been in worship for nature, like some of the stuff that I do now around embodiment is for me deeply, deeply divine and,
Mm,
led by spirit. I think we can speak, how many times have we both said God or spirit or, higher
mm,
power during the duration of this conversation? We're both
mm.
divinely guided. And for me, like being in recovery has been a gateway to finding
100.
that pathway. And it is a pathway of our own making. And I love how openly you embrace your faith. I don't think I've ever heard you share that story.
Oh, really?
And
Oh,
that like got me thinking because I've never taken the time to come and hear your testimony
mm,
because of my beliefs, my
mm,
projections around Christianity. That's the truth.
mm,
It's taken me a while of you being so devout and strong in your faith to come to
mm,
terms with the fact that this is your chosen pathway and it's yours to
mm,
choose. And I love the sovereignty because I'm all
mm,
about sovereignty and personal choice, right? And like being able to decide for ourselves what is
mm.
gifted to us. And like just hearing your passion, I just thought, wow, like that's beautiful. And it isn't that far away from mine. Like we're divinely
Mm,
guided. Like when you speak about that being led out by this power greater than yourself, like I totally identify with that time and
mm,
time again. I've had that experience of like being busted open by God love,
mm.
by spirit, whatever I want to call it, is the same life force, the same energy. And
Definitely.
I believe it shows up for us in the way that we
Mm,
can receive it
definitely.
in this human form.
Mm,
But yeah, I loved, and it's words I've used myself. Like I've stuck something on my Instagram a few weeks ago saying, your human mind cannot even begin to fathom
mm.
the divinity that we are and how God-given everything about us is.
Yeah,
We are creations of this
absolutely.
divine spirit
Mm,
walking around in this human form.
mm,
So, yeah, we're never really that far away from one another, even though we might choose to believe in different things. So,
mm.
yeah, and I just wanted to call myself out on that, really, that element of judgment that's kept me separate
Mm.
from you.
I shared that
Uh,
judgment. I shared that judgment myself. Why it was such a shock that like, and really, for me, there's a thing of I feel chosen. I didn't choose. So there was a
mm,
thing of absolutely not. My ego was way too big to be a member of the God Squad. Do you know what I mean? Like absolutely
yeah.
not. And then God had a different plan, which I've learned is generally much better than my plans. My plans get me into 12-step fellowships and all sorts of trouble. And then God's plan is to keep me there and to help me grow. So yeah,
Mm,
definitely, yeah, definitely a process and a journey. And thank God that we are entitled to, our own processes and understanding of a higher power, right? Because like you say, I explored Buddhism. I'd
Mm,
been to, yeah, the nature, in anything and everything outside of a religion, I would explore. Do not come to me with that stuff.
mm.
So yeah, I share that with you, and I share that openly because I think it can be off-putting if people think that you've got to be a
Yeah.
Christian or you've got it can be off-putting for a lot of people. And I think it's important that people understand that there are many ways, and that's okay. Do you know what I
Mm,
mean? I don't ram my beliefs down anyone's neck, but I will
mm.
openly embrace and speak about it because I love Jesus. I'm one of those now. Do you know what I mean? I'm one of those guys. I'm the God Squad.
I love it. I love it. We're all the God Squad ultimately. It's just some
Yeah.
of us
Mm.
recognize it in different ways. It's quite interesting as well because I am just thinking about. I'm like looking around my little witching room, all my little broomstick and my little things that are all witchy, and I'm like, actually, I think that, but we've both been on a journey, if we're honest, right,
Mm.
about accepting one another's faiths and belief systems and like just allowing one another to be. And
Mm.
like the beautiful thing that is evident is just our deep love for one another and our respect for one another,
Absolutely.
as
Yeah,
sisters, as individuals.
absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah, and I think a lot of that is a testament to the work that you do on yourself, and the continuous like effort that you apply to being a better version of yourself. And obviously that's, as you say, you're a disciple of Jesus, and this is
mm,
part of your guidance is coming from spirit, and it's like a beautiful thing, but you are also choosing to show up and do the work, and I love that.
definitely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So what are some of the pieces that have kind of been really beneficial or helpful for you as you've started to move along in your journey and you've created this relationship with, a God of your understanding? And what would you like to share with people?
I guess that one of the biggest lessons I've learned is it's okay to make mistakes.
Mm,
Um, I come from a place of kind of thinking perfectionism is quite a good trait to have, right? But then I find out, no, actually, Kate, it's the inability to accept that you can make mistakes or get things wrong. It's crippling. And I've made lots of mistakes along the way. I still make mistakes. But my process of being gentler on myself, uh,
mm,
allowing myself to get help. Pride. For some reason, I've got this pride that wants to, without any practice or experience, know exactly what I'm doing, when I'm doing it, and control and actually, being a member of Narcotics Anonymous and realizing I needed some outside help for codependency.
mm.
And thank God for that. That alone, that I could do a whole podcast just on that. Because what
Yeah.
I've discovered is actually I'm a codependent that use substances to try and cope with a codependency. Oh my God,
Mm,
it's intense. It's intense. The power people had over me and my being and my feelings and my whole worth was absolutely insane. And when I say was in past tense, let's be real, do currently still at moments have this power over me. And
mm,
I needed freedom. So I've explored those routes and I currently am working both programs alongside my faith and I'm being freed from really self-restricting, unhealthy behaviors and thinking patterns in that
mm,
process. And I do want to honor the people that are taking me through that process. So, I won't name names, but they know they are. The
mm,
women, actually, and my support network, including yourself, that I can't do this on my own. And
mm,
that in itself is, a revelation. When you come from, don't tell anyone anything, keep the secrets, da, 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 no one needs to know. Actually, it's complete opposite now. It's like, yeah, I'm going to share this. I'm going to share my all the ugly truth, really, and I'm going to be
mm,
vulnerable and I'm going to expose myself, actually, because you know why? Because I believe in that. There's a profound opportunity to help others that are
mm.
suffering in silence, like I did for many years, and I'm sure you did too,
Yeah.
um, through no choice of their own, but not knowing any different.
Mm,
So I'm like a broken human being that's getting mended, put back together by multiple contributing processes.
Mm.
It's quite beautiful.
Yeah, and actually it's that input from the other forces
Mm,
that's making you stronger, right? Because you're being put back together, but glued back
mm,
together with more
yeah.
kind of love and force
Mm,
and yeah, holding than previously. So we're kind of coming out stronger, wiser. And I love how you said that because it's so true. Like without the support network, because I think the things for recovery for me that are so surprising. I actually was journaling this morning and I was like, wow. Like I've been reflecting because this week when we're recording this, I'm celebrating 13 years, right? So it's
absolutely.
like,
Woo!
yeah, and I was just like reflecting on recovery, thinking, wow, like it's so crazy because the things that you think recovery are, and then you come in and you realize actually recovery is healthy boundaries.
Mm,
Recovery is well, understanding what a boundary is, let's be honest.
mm,
Recovery is actually mainly focused on relationships, relationship with self, relationship with others, relationship with a power greater than yourself, or with,
mm,
you know, the universe around you, whatever, however you define it. And, you know, like the ability to accept and ask for help,
yeah.
and then also to be of service to others. You know,
Mm,
like it's such these factors, you don't come into recovery thinking that's what it's going to be, but they're all ultimately like the cornerstones, you know,
mm,
the things that make the greatest change. And we sort of unpack those, don't we, through the process of working the steps and being supported and asking for help. And that in itself is like such a miracle, right? That we can go from
yeah.
this process of being like, leave me alone, I've got this, and
Mm,
you know,
mm.
I yeah, fear of being found out to being willing to ask for help.
You know, on that note, what I find absolutely remarkable, and it still blows my mind on a daily
Mm,
basis, is
mm.
being able to help others selflessly.
Weird.
Literally, like my spirit ignites when I connect with another female. And I've got some good male friends too, but you know, the basis and foundation is really strong women who I adore, right? And that when you connect and that vulnerability and that real transparency and being able to offer and sometimes no guidance because I don't have the experience, but you know what, I can hear you, I can hold space
Yeah.
for you. It's something really truly beautiful. That is not what I expected. You know, that's not what I expected. Just being able to want to help someone else,
Mm,
to make time for others it's a gift.
it
It-
really is. Yeah. And as you're saying that, I'm seeing visions of myself where my human will be like, oh, you know, just before the occurrence of being of service, I'll be like, oh, I can't believe I've got to have this call. I've got to do this. And but then in the moment, I'm like, my spirit, my soul is like,
Mm,
yes. And
yeah.
like it's so esteemable and it's so nourishing and it's so right and it's so aligned. And yeah, it's kind of a crazy thing. It's like this constant battle with my
Mm,
humanity, you know, my humanness and my selfishness and my like
mm,
fear of not being enough, actually, I
mm,
think is what underlines all of that. Is like, am
mm,
I enough? Like, can I
mm,
actually be trusted with this? And a lot of the lessons for me have been, oh, I need to get myself out of the way. I need to get my human out of the way and just
mm,
let whatever needs to come through will flow
mm,
through me, you know?
mm. Yeah,
Yeah. And I
it's
see
really
you.
cool.
I see how much you do for others. You know, I see how much you do for the women in the fellowship, and I see how respected you are by others because you are authentically turning up and doing your very best, you know, and you are so brutally honest when you don't get it right, when you allow
Oh,
yourself to make mistakes,
mm,
you
yeah,
know. Yeah, yeah, I really respect you for that.
thank
Mm,
you.
yeah. Oof. So many gifts have come, right, in this process of transformation you've been through. Do you want to talk about some of those? Because I'd love to hear your perspective.
Oh wow, yeah, there are so many as well, actually.
Mm,
You know, just my children and the relationship I have with them.
mm,
Uh, being able to be a mum is it's a struggle some days. You know, they've all got their own little wants and needs and emotional, you know, challenges, and but just being able to show up, um, being able to show up for them and myself,
mm.
But then actually meeting my husband in recovery, my now husband in recovery, um, coming back from that relapse actually, and I'd stayed single in recovery.
Mm.
I knew I was a problem in relationships because I come from a string of toxic, codependent relationships.
Mm.
One of which was, was very violent, where I was on the receiving end of severe domestic violence. And when I came in, I knew I was an issue, and I made this pact with my sponsor that I wanted to get through the 12 steps before I even entertained the thought. She was like, "Oh, that's quite a big commitment." I was like, "No, I mean it. Hold it to me.
Mm.
Hold me to it. Hold me to it."
Mm.
And then I went and relapsed, and when I come back, this certain person caught my eye, and I remember calling. She wasn't my sponsor then, but she was still my go-to. She knew
Mm.
me. It was my safe space, and I still laugh about it now. And I said to her, "Well, what it is, there's this man that she went, oh, who is he? Do you know what I mean? Who's caught your eye?" Like that. And I went, well, I was frightened actually. I was frightened, not of him, of me. And
Mm.
she went, right, so take a healthy risk. Ask him out for a coffee. I went, what? Because I'm
Yeah.
expecting her to go, absolutely not. You just come back from relapse. I guess I think I was looking for her to block it, right? Because
Mm.
I would just take that guidance. And she was like, you've done a lot of work on yourself, you know. Um, Take a healthy risk. And actually, I did. I invited him out for a hot chocolate after the meeting one Thursday night. And here we are approaching, in January, we've been together 6 years. We've been married 3 in May. And it's the healthiest, most beautiful relationship I've ever been in.
Yeah.
And my children have got a wonderful stepdad.
Mm.
Uh, because as a result of my bad decisions, two of my children don't have their dads around at all. They're not in the picture. And
Mm.
that pains me. I know what it's like to have a fatherless upbringing, and I know that that can have a knock-on effect. And he's a wonderful dad, not only to my children but to his children. It was one of the things I fell in love with, actually, the way he
Mm.
shows up for his children, and being able to look at a man and not assassinate. Because I come in with these entrenched beliefs that all men are bad, or they
Mm.
can't show up, or they're because of my father, because of our dad. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
An inability, emotionally unavailable, physically unavailable, violent. Did it? So really, if I look at the previous partners, they'd all had one or more traits of my dad. You know what I mean? I sort almost reproduced this unhealthy, yeah, yeah, had this unhealthy belief of what I maybe deserved or what I was worth.
Mm.
Um, and he broke the mold. This one, he broke the
Mm.
mold, and you know. I'm married, for goodness sake. I'm in a happy marriage, a committed relationship, and
Mm.
I'm very blessed, actually. I am.
Yeah.
And I can take that for granted some days. Let's be
Mm.
honest, the humanness. But yeah, I am very blessed. He's a
Mm.
hardworking, loving, committed man. Um, yeah, who takes care and provides for us as a family, and yeah, massive. I didn't think I'd ever want to be, let alone actually be in a relationship ever again, because
Mm.
enormous traumas and um, lack of
Mm.
faith within that area. And things have changed. I've changed. I've changed.
Mm.
I'm still changing. I'm constantly changing and growing. And he's in recovery too. It's beautiful. You get to see this ripple effect, I guess. Obviously watch you and your journey as well. And what I used to think was this, I mean, this is on its own, I thought, my God, she's gone really cold and like hard. And what I now know is was boundaries. Oh, I
Mm.
can't stand it. Look at her over there. Because obviously I was still using. But actually you was finding boundaries, finding yourself, because you was on this journey way before me, right?
Mm.
And now I get to see that in others. It's just, yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah, and obviously becoming opening a recovery ministry has got to be one of, alongside with, my brother Raf. Um,
Mm.
yeah, yeah, just being part of that actually, being part of building God's kingdom, if you will, and creating another safe space outside of the 12-step rooms and where recovering addicts can come. And they don't, this is not just for Christians. This may be people seeking a higher power. This might be
Mm.
people that don't believe. This, if you're a Hindu, a Muslim, a Buddhist, you're welcome. Do you know what I mean? And just that
Mm.
safe space where um, they will come and be loved and
Yeah.
welcomed and safe. And yeah, there's been so much, so many
Mm.
gifts, so
Mm.
many gifts. And
Yeah.
yeah, just the relationships I have today,
Mm.
authentic relationships, authentic. And my circle isn't big.
Yeah.
I've got a really small circle of people that I absolutely 100% trust with my life and life decisions. So
Mm.
having the trust and faith in them to go to them and actually say, listen, this is the ugly truth sometimes about my thoughts or behaviors when I've made a mistake or fallen short, and being loved. Okay. And then,
Mm.
offered a solution or just given a safe space to share where I'm at, what I might be
Yeah.
feeling on any given day. Um,
Mm.
Being able to make an amends to my auntie before she passed,
Yeah.
invaluable. Like if that was all I got,
Mm.
um, yeah. And then, you know, the relationship with my mum, although not what other people may see as ideal, is very different to how it was.
Yeah.
Um, and these are things that I've established on my values, family, and
Mm.
values that mean a lot to me. And instead of comparing to what others might have or what the fantasy of a mum that's at home baking cakes, a granny that's, it's not my reality. But my mum is special, and she was
Mm.
part of my recovery journey with alongside you, at the
Yeah.
beginning. And she's one of my biggest supporters.
Yeah, she is. Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot's happened. A lot's happened. I'll probably, we'll probably wrap up at some point, and then later on, I'll be like, I didn't mention this, I didn't mention this, because there's so many, and some of
Mm.
them it's a bit like what you said earlier that it's nothing what I imagined. So when I come into recovery, I wanted to get my kids back. I wanted a nice home. I wanted a car. It was quite materialistic, say,
Material. Yeah.
superficial. And my biggest achievements are nothing within that. I achieved all of those goals,
Yeah.
but the internal peace of mind, not despising myself on a daily basis, not self-harming on a daily basis, whether that be
Mm.
through the use of drugs, food, or overspending, whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
Not having to do that anymore. I have a
Mm.
choice today, like the freedom
Yeah.
of choice, which is incredible. I'm no longer
Totally.
trapped.
Yeah.
So there's so many gifts. My sponsors are gifts to me.
Mm.
How they got up with me on a daily basis, I have no idea.
Well, I think that's, yeah, I mean, there's so many things in there. Like, I think sort of said it's relationships, it's boundaries, it's like it's a relationship with a higher power, these things, these cornerstones
Mm,
we get, right? And then you've kind of touched on all of those, like coming into recovery, and whether you were sick, whether you were about 6 months or whatever when you
yeah.
met your partner, and who I love. Like
Mm,
from my perspective, your relationship with him is the first where I've actually been able to breathe and go, ah, she's safe.
yeah.
Like just knowing that you're not going to be physically harmed, you're not going to be left uncared for, like there's true devotional love there between the two
Mm,
of you, in spite of your, that you're a married couple. All couples have like experiences where you're like, don't agree with that. But like you are absolutely like so well suited. And it made me think I was fortunate enough to be asked to share by him in a meeting on
mm,
Monday to celebrate my clean time, and he was like, it's mad, isn't it? Because we were reflecting on that particular meeting and how it's been a big part of my journey, and then years
yeah.
later, his. And he said, and it's where I met your sister, like it's where he met you, and he went, and now we're married, and now you're my sister-in-law, and like we had this full circle
Yeah.
moment of like, that's mad. And I said
Yeah.
to him, yeah, I remember you coming to the meeting in your shorts in the
Mm,
winter, like he just like there's just like, yeah, the little miracles and gifts of recovery, right? The relationships that we end up with. I met my partner through recovery. We were friends
Mm,
before we became partners, but I certainly didn't have any plans to
yeah,
meet a woman in the rooms of recovery and then later fall in love with a woman. I was
yeah,
in a heterosexual relationship with a man for many, many years.
yeah.
We'd separated, and then I made this friendship, and this beautiful relationship grew. And
Mm,
she's one of the greatest things to be brought to me in my recovery, like to experience in my recovery is what the connection we have. So yeah, it's really beautiful that we can find ourselves and find love.
mm,
And then when you spoke about I think, those leaving those destructive relationships behind, you just got me thinking about it's insane how we will keep creating or almost like recreating situations in order for us to live them out and fix them. So
mm,
like almost recreating that destructive family of origin, or whatever that experience is that we need, like our absent father.
mm,
We end up in relationship patterns where we're finding these aspects of these individuals that we need to fix
yeah,
within ourselves, so we can live them out
yeah.
and like work through. But actually the real reparenting, as you said, reparenting yourself comes in when we start to make healthy choices about who we decide to be
Absolutely.
in partnership with, and we really start to
Mm,
change and tear up that script and say, nah, I'm going to do it differently.
yeah.
Really beautiful. I really, really loved listening to your gifts and your Christian ministry work as well, like really finding your way there and like being held in that and then expanding that and bringing people along on that journey. I love that. And I love the fact that your church is queer friendly. That means so much because there's so much in the doctrine of like religion that is, and within Christianity there are sects that are anti-queer, and I feel like as a queer identifying person, as a somebody from the LGBTQIA plus community, like for me it's really important to know that those spaces exist where regardless of your gender, your sexual orientation, you belong, you are loved, you are welcome.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
There was absolutely no evidence that Jesus was homophobic. None whatsoever. And no, everyone is created. If everyone is created in, God's likeness
Mm,
in a divine way, how can any part of us be wrong?
yeah. And
How
it's
can it?
not called to judge. We're called
No.
to love.
Yeah.
It's not, yeah, it's not any of that hate,
Yeah.
not of God, in my view.
Exactly.
Mm,
Agreed.
not.
Yeah. Yeah. I couldn't agree with you more. Yeah, and then when you sort of spoke about the relationships that you have with others, and all of those pieces, I just feel like, yeah, I couldn't agree more. Some of the friendships that we build in recovery, it's like you can know somebody for 2 minutes in a meeting and share your deepest secret and know that they
Mm,
get you more than people that have walked alongside you your entire life, because
yeah.
you've walked the same pathway. You understand, and that raw honesty is
Mhm.
such a defining factor, right? In being able to trust others and know, yeah, like they get it. They get
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Mm, so yummy. There's also work that I know that you do with the homeless, right? I'd love you to share a little bit about that because I wonder if there are ways that people who are listening might be able to support.
Yeah, definitely. So my husband and I, we run a CIC, so it's a community interest company. Where a goal would be we'd like to be an established charity, but it's called Friendly Faces in Lonely Places, and we do homeless outreach where our aim is to go out and be a friendly face in those lonely places and provide not only a friendly face, a listening ear, we provide hot food, clothes, sleeping bags, and tents for those that need it. Um, but what we actually try to do there as well is 12 step them, get them
Mm,
into recovery because what comes hand in hand with a lot of homelessness is addiction. Um, Mental health. So, what we try and do is signpost. And actually, I need to give credit where credit's due. This is definitely my husband's baby. This is definitely
mm,
his forte. He's gifted. He has a natural gift. He's very good when we're on outreach. He's got a natural way of supporting those in need, where he provides this safe space, and I mean within himself, where they
Mm.
will talk to him, he'll exchange numbers, and he will go above and beyond. And I just kind of assist him in that, really. I might do a bit more behind the scenes, admin stuff, a bit of, social media posting,
Mm.
collecting donations, stuff like that. But we help people. We help people. And a lot of that would look like, once a month we do the combined outreach with another organization called Street Food, where there's a hot food van. He prepares hot meals. We lay out tables with clothing and toiletries and all of the said stuff.
Mm.
And we provide where we can provide. And the tough thing is about this is we are solely dependent on people's generosity and contribution.
Yeah.
So my husband does foot the bill a lot of the time out of his own pocket, because
Mm.
pots and funding have have been cut back a lot from,
Mm.
organisations that once would have been able to support ventures like ours, no longer can. So yeah, we do rely solely on the generosity of members of the public, other organisations, so to speak, and my husband's bank account. So that's the current situation, bless him. But yeah,
Mm.
his passion is there. His passion is there, and I just try and support with that. I can't
Mm.
really take the credit for it.
No, and I love that. I mean, that is definitely his baby. I'd love to link to that though. So if
Mm,
anybody's listening and they feel like they'd like to support with donations, financial support, in whatever their
absolutely.
time, I'm sure that your partner,
It'd be really
Christian,
greatly received.
would
Yeah,
be,
absolutely.
yeah, really welcoming to have additional support. Ah, I feel like we're kind of coming to a natural
Mm,
conclusion, right? Um, and I think there's so much more we could talk about. I mean, we've spoken a lot about your recovery journey today, but like there's other parts that I just want to celebrate, about you and I and our relationship and how far
mm,
we've come, from just, yeah, that journey that we've just described, but also to like what a solid standout person you are in my life, and how much joy you bring me, like seeing you grow, seeing you flourish. Like as I'm saying it's my heart's swelling and I can feel like real emotion. Just seeing the woman you are today is like such a privilege to bear witness to yeah, see the choices that you make. That for me has been a journey, like allowing you to be that woman, like letting go actually of control. I think a big part of a turning point for us, and I don't know if you remember it as clearly as me, but it was we'd gone to retreat together and
mm,
I was feeling so rejected by
mm,
you. And you weren't doing anything wrong. You were just like hanging out with your mates and you'd made some choices that you hadn't run past me before that. And they were like sort of an accumulation of me feeling unneeded. And
mm,
what you highlighted for me was like this codependency, really, like this need for me to be needed in order to be
mm,
valuable, to be someone of worth. And I think that weekend, I remember we did some kind of practices, some journaling around things we were going to let go of.
mm,
And the whole weekend, like this internal dialogue was building for me of like feeling rejected, feeling abandoned, a huge wound of mine that I've had to do lots of work on over the years. But there was this one defining moment where I kind of had this awareness, this awakening of like, oh, I'm I'm sort of, there's a part of me that's convinced I'm responsible for you. There's
yeah.
a part of me that's been parentified almost, and that feels
Mm,
like I'm responsible for your happiness. And actually, all that's happening here is you are taking personal responsibility for your happiness. And in that, I've distorted it and made it seem like I'm being rejected, when actually, the thing that is in my greatest benefit is to allow you to take personal
yeah.
responsibility. um, and I just remember this moment where I kind of threw into the fire this like, letting go of responsibility of things that aren't
Mm,
mine, like
yeah.
letting go and then looking up and just seeing you stood there, arms open, ready to hold me.
Mm,
Oh, here we go. I feel really emotional. And you just saying, it's okay.
Mm.
You don't have to take care of me anymore. Like I'm okay, and I'm not your responsibility.
Yeah.
You're free now.
Mm.
Um, yeah, and it was such a gift, to
Mm.
be set free, to
Yeah.
be told it's okay, Claire. Like, to little Claire,
Mm.
that meant the world. Like, she was just like, breathe a sigh of relief, because I guess my whole life I'd been feeling like, yeah, I've got to make this okay. Everything, I've got to
Because
make
you
everything okay.
had to.
Yeah.
That wasn't, that wasn't made up. That was a reality for you for your whole childhood and into your teens. You were responsible for not only I, but another sister. So that
Mm.
isn't just going to go overnight. And then obviously then taking responsibility yet again in my adult life because of my addiction. So that was massive. It's not kind of one of those made up scenarios in your mind, is it? It's reality and had been for a long time. So I think that it needs honouring
Mm.
as well.
Thank you.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah, but there's such a freedom in like acknowledging it and letting it go with love, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Now you don't see me for dust. I'm like, not my problem. You're on your own, love. You made your bed, now lie in it.
What?
No, but you're definitely someone I can turn to when I need, when I
Yeah,
need a friend, and that's really
likewise.
important. Like, we've got
Mm.
friendship now, right? And like,
Yeah,
there's
absolutely.
nobody else I know who I can like who gets my jokes, who gets my stupid sense of humor, who I can call and go, ah, right, and like just be completely welcomed in my stupidness. So yeah, yeah, I
Ah,
love you.
love you too.
Thank you for being my rock.
Mm.
Ah, yeah. Now, I always wrap up the episodes with a little takeaway for people, like a piece of advice, a little pearl that you'd like to share with people who are maybe embarking upon a journey of transformation. There might be people in recovery, there might be people who are not seeking recovery. Is there anything you'd like to share with people that you feel would be helpful for them to hear as we wrap up?
Do you know there was a gift given to me by my first sponsor, and I share it with people that I try and support, and it has been invaluable. Is that when you have a mind that's as fast as mine and that can be as unkind as mine, that basically ended up taking me back into that relapse, into that, you know, that darkness again. She said to me, Katie, tell someone everything, right? And she said, it doesn't matter how trivial it seems, how small, how big, how insane. You share it with someone. She said, it doesn't have to be me, but tell someone everything. So you're not alone. And what that is a gift of you are never alone. Do you know what I mean? And it prevents that internal voice of mine. I can only speak from my experience of you've got to do this on your own. That toxic self-sufficiency. When you tell someone everything, someone knows where you're at. You are seen, you are heard, and actually there's a safety in that for me. I took that when I come back from my relapse, and I was kind of offloading, and what I knew nothing about any of this, and then she
Mm.
gifted me that. It's kept me safe. I'm over 6.5 years clean now after that relapse. I tell someone everything, and trust me, some of my thinking is a little bit biased. You know what I mean? I share it. I tell
Mm.
someone everything, and that gift is I can't take credit for, but that is definitely a gift that I would like to pass on.
Beautiful. I love
Mm,
that. Thank
yeah.
you. Yeah, and thank you to the person that shared that with you. She's
Mm,
a really beautiful woman. Oh, it's been soul food. Yeah.
mm,
And
no,
like,
thank you.
yeah, really, really such an honor to have you be a guest. And yeah, we'll link to, yeah, Kate's partner's charity, and to the recovery ministry for those that are
Yeah,
curious about checking that out. Yeah, and I'm just really so grateful to have heard you. Thank you for coming and sharing your time so willingly with us. I
yeah,
love you.
thank you. I love you too, and thank you for your time.
Mm.